Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Slauson. So you're not going to see me in the screen because I'm working straight off of my computer. And we are going to be going over page 57 in the homework. There wasn't a lot of time or any time to work on this in class, and so I didn't want to leave you hanging on this. So I'm really hoping you are watching this video. So in this, we are going to be using, it says synthetic division. That's that upside down like division box that I showed you. I didn't give it that name, synthetic division, but that is technically what this is called. And we're also going to be using the rational root theorem because as we go through these 8 problems, our goal would be to try and factor. And what we're going to find out is that none of these are factorable. So the best problems are going to be 1 and 2 because I already give you some of the zeros, and that's what we did in the homework. So the idea is 2 is one of these factors, or sorry, not one of these factors, but one of these zeros. Okay. And as I go through that, remember when I put my numbers inside that box, I just want to make sure when I look at this problem that I'm highlighting right now is that I do have all of the x's starting with 3. So I have an x to the third, an x to the squared, I have an x, and then no x. So you have to have what I'm calling that kind of like that countdown. So I'm going to put the numbers in front of the x's, those are called the coefficients, inside that box. So I'm going to have a 2, a 1, a negative 13, and a 6. Okay, so just picking up where I left off, remember what we're going to do is we're just going to bring that first number down, and just a heads up that we might get interrupted, so I'll be pausing again. And I bring that number down, and then I start multiplying. So I take the 2 times at the bottom with the 2 on the outside of the box, on the left side that is, and I get 4, and then I add this column of 1 and 4, and I get 5. And then I'm going to multiply the 5 with the 2 on the left, and that's 10. And I'm going to add this column and get negative 3. And then I'm going to take the negative 3 with the 2 on the left to get negative 6, and that's going to give me a 0. So from there, what happens is we go to the bottom, and remember, we do want this 0. That said it was a 0. And then the negative 3 does not have an x, but then I start to add x's as I work my way up from the right to the left. And then I'm going to take this 2x squared and 5x and minus 3, and I'm going to factor. So I'm going to be writing some of this stuff down and erasing it later just for sake of room. So I'm going to come over to this box because I do tend to write a little bigger when I'm just on the computer screen. I'm going to be taking factors of negative 6x squared, and that's looking that add up to give me 5x, and that'll be a 6x and a negative 1x. And so now when I start with my factors, so here are the parentheses that will become the factors. Again, I'm working for these numbers, but I'm going to start with the 2x squared that I'm circling right now. So what times what would make 2x squared, and that would be a 2x and an x. And so from there, I draw the loops, and this is where I work for these side numbers that I'm circling again. So can I take 2x times something and make this 6x? And I can. That would be a 3. So that gives me the 6x. And then can I take x times something to make this negative 1x? And that would be a minus 1. And then once you get your factors, you can set them equal to 0 and solve. So some of you don't need to do this, but I'll go ahead and start showing that. So I can take this 2x minus 1, set it equal to 0. I'd add the 1. And then I would divide by 2, and I get a half. So this factor of 2x minus 1 makes the solution of x equals a half. And then I could take the other one, set it equal to 0, subtract 3, and I get my other answer. And then remember, this exponent in the original problem says that there are 3 zeros. I've given you one of them. So included in x equals negative 3 and x equals 1/2, we want to remember that x equals 2, which was given to you, is one of the 3 solutions. Okay? All right. So I'm going to erase this part because I don't need it, and I'm going to move on to problem 2. So problem 2 is unique. We did not cover one like this in class. So again, I do give you one of the zeros, so I'm going to switch that over first. I'm going to make my box, put that negative 1 on the outside. I'm going to check over here that I have all my x's, which I do. I have a third power, a second power. You can see me highlighting an x and just a number. And I'm going to take those numbers and put them in the box. So 1, negative 2, and 1. So first I'm going to bring this 1 down, and then I start multiplying. So remember, the number on the left side of the outside of the box is what I use. So 1 and -1 is -1, and I add those up. And then I'm going to take this -3 times this -1, which I've underlined, which is 3, add the next column up, and then I'm going to take 1 times the -1, get -1, and I should get 0. So from there, again, just remember, this is what I wanted, this is a constant, this gets x squared. And so what I would try to do is factor x squared minus 3x plus 1. So this next part I'm about to erase, because when I look for factors of 1 that get me to -3, that's not factorable. So that one's out, so I'm going to erase it. And at this point, I need to use the quadratic formula. So I need to remember that a is 1, and b is -3, and c is 1. And now I'm going to do the quadratic formula. So it goes x equals opposite of b, so I write 3. Plus or minus, I make a square root, and then I take b and square it. So I'm going to be taking this -3 that I'm circling and squaring it, and that gives me 9, and then minus 4 times a times c, and then all of that's over 2 times a, so 2 times 1 is 2. So from there, I just go in, and I'm going to clean up that square root. And order of operations says I should do all of this multiplying first, which turns into 4. So when I'm done, I have the square root of 5 in there. And so this is a great answer. You're more than welcome to leave it like that. So your 3 solutions, because remember there is a 3 there, is this x equals -1 that they told us, and then the other 2 come from the 3 plus or minus square root of 5. If you want to turn it into decimals so you can actually see that, one of them would be 2.62 and then the other one would be 0.38. And so if you like that format, I'm just going to go ahead and put the solution that they gave us of -1. And these, which I'm writing down now and about to circle, are the 3 solutions. So our notes didn't cover one with the quadratic formula, but there it is. Okay, so let's try number 3. And at this point, what we should do is make a list of numbers to test. So I'm going to write the list of numbers. Again, I'm going to be doing some erasing because I don't have a lot of room. Unfortunately, this wasn't well thought out. But the idea is I should go to the end and take factors of -24. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to use the space over here, and I'll erase these numbers. And I like to put them in numerical order. And I should have a plus and a minus that goes with all of these. And then I want to go to the number in the front, which is a 1, and find factors of 1, which is just 1. And then this 24 becomes my numerator in the fractions, and the 1 becomes the denominator. And if I start taking 1 and 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 and put them over 1, I just end up with the same numbers. So the numbers I want to test on the outside of the box are going to be written right now. So a positive or a negative: 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 24. So even though it looks like I have 8 numbers written down, there's actually 16 because there's a positive number and a negative version. So what should happen is I should be able to come over here and put any of these numbers that I'm circling right now on the outside of the box. So I'm going to go on my calculator right now, and I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to find one that's going to work right away. And the number that's going to work right away is -3, -2 is going to work, 4 is going to work, so I'm just going to pick -2. Okay, so that's this right here, the -2 that I just circled in orange. So now I'm going to go back. I have my full countdown of a third power, second power, first power, and no power, and then they're going to go in the box. Okay, I don't need this big list of numbers under problem 4, so I am going to erase them at this point. All right, and I bring my first number down, and then I'm going to be multiplying the numbers on the bottom with this -2 on the left. So the first time I multiply, I get -2, add those up, that's -1. I multiply again, I get 2, then I add up and I get -12, and then I multiply again for 24, and when I'm done I get 0. So remember, 0 is what we want. This will be a C, the -12. The -1 will have an X, and the 1 would have an X squared. So this is what I'm going to try to factor now. So what are factors? And I'm going to come over here under number 4 because I'll erase it later. I need factors of negative 12. That'll get me to negative 1. And that's going to be a negative 4x and a 3x. So over here, I'm going to go to my parentheses or my factors. And remember, to get to when I'm about to circle x squared, I need an x, I need an x and an x. And then I'll focus on these numbers on the right that I'm circling. And can I take x times something and make, let's get a different color here, this negative 4? And I can. That can be a minus 4. And then I draw x to the other loop, and is there x times something that can give me this 3x, and that's plus 3. So remember, I'm finding all the zeros. So if I set these factors now, x plus 3 and x minus 4 equal to 0, oh, sorry about that. This one, these are pretty easy. I'll get negative 3, and this one I get 4. And then there's one more 0, which was given to us, which was x equals negative 2. And if you want the factor for it, that would just be like x plus 2. So by doing this, I actually now have all the factors. Here they are, x plus 3, x minus 4, x plus 2, and I have all the solutions that come with it. X equals negative 3, x equals 4, and x equals negative 2. All right, so now I'm going to erase my x under problem 4 because I don't need it there anymore. And let's take a look at number 4. So this making of the list of numbers is actually quite a bit. It's a lot. So we're going to do a little cheating, and I'm going to put my calculator up on the screen for you, and I'm going to go to my y equals button, and I'm going to put an x cubed minus 7x minus 6. So let me move the calculator into the screen. Y equals, and I'm just going to type in x cubed minus 7x minus 6. And if you want to see what it looks like, that's fine. I would just do zoom 6. When I'm more interested in the table and I'm looking for the zeros, so I'm going to use this to cheat. And I notice right away on my screen that when x is 3, y is 0. So I'm going to use that instead of making this list. So over here, let's switch colors on you now. I'm going to make my little box. The 3 will go here. And when I look at my list of my problem, I have an x cubed, but I don't have an x squared. So I'll have to think of that when I put a number in. We're going to put in what we call a placeholder. So I'll put a 1 for the x cubed. Whoops, you can't see that. But since there is no x squared, I'll put a placeholder of a 0. And then I have for my x a negative 7, and then for the plain number, I just have the negative 6. And I'm going to start by bringing this number down and then multiplying with this 3. So when I multiply, I get 3. I'm going to add the column and get 3. Then I'm going to take 3 with the underlined 3 and get 9, add this up and get 2. And then I'm going to take 2 with 3 and get 6, which gives me the 0 that I need. Again, that 0 is great, but the 2 is the constant. This gets the x, and this gets the x squared. And then I can factor. So what are factors of 2x squared that get me to 3x? And that's just a 2x and a 1x. So now I can make my factors. And again, I'm asking myself x times, or what times what makes this x squared? And that's just an x and an x. And then I'm going to focus on these side numbers to fill in the rest of my parentheses. So can I take x times something and make 2x? And I can, that's plus 2. And then can I take x something times something to get 1x, and that's plus 1. So now I'm ready to solve because it's pretty easy to figure out what's going to make these parentheses 0. So what's going to make x plus 1 equal 0 would be a negative 1. What's going to make x plus 2 equals 0 is negative 2. And remember, there's 3 answers according to my leading term. And that other answer is the 3 that I used the calculator to tell me. And if I wanted to, I could actually write a factor for that of x minus 3. So again, what I'm doing here is quite a bit. I'm going from, not only am I solving, here's my solving, here all, and it did say just factor completely. So the factoring completely is actually what I'm putting in the box. We actually did a little bit more, okay? So factoring completely is what's in the box. If the directions said to solve, that's what I circled. So let's try another one. So let's just jump to I don't know, let's try number 8. It does say factor completely. We will factor, but then I'm going to also solve. So again, if I did try to factor this problem right here, it would not factor. It wouldn't work. So what we want to do to cheat a little bit is I'm going to go to the y equals button, coming back, bringing this in my screen, and I want to go to my y equals and just type this new equation in. So 2x cubed plus x squared plus 5x, and then minus 3. And again, if you want to see what it looks like, just press zoom and then 6. That's great. But we're more interested in the table and what would make it become 0. So I'm going to have to hit. Okay, so what I'm seeing is nothing. So let's talk about what you do there. Since I can't see, what I want to do is actually see where that x-intercept is. So I'm going to go to second trace, and Desmos, I could type it in and just tap and it would be there. But I'm going to do the 0. So I'm just going to tap this point. And I'm going to see that it's a half. So this is the first time we're going to put a decimal on the outside of the x. Okay, so whoops. All right, so I'm going to put a half here. Don't worry, we'll be able to work with it. And then I'm going to check my countdown. I have a third, a second, a first, and just a number. So 2 and 1 and 5 and -3. I'm going to bring the first number down, which is a 2. And then I'm going to multiply. So multiplying with the half. Half of 2 is 1. Add that column up, I get 2. And then I'll do half of 2 again, which is 1. Add that up, that's 4. Then half of 4 is 2, and something does not work out here, so give me a moment and I'll figure this out. So just pausing, I saw the mistake. 5 plus 1 isn't 4, it's 6. So then half of 6 is 3, and when I add that up, I get 0. So now what I'm going to do is take this, again, we want that, this becomes a constant, that gets an x, that gets an x squared, and I'm going to take 2x squared plus 2x plus 6. So one thing I notice right away is that I actually can factor a 2 out, so I'm going to do that just so I have smaller numbers to work with. And then what I'm underlining is what I would try to factor. So I'm going to move in the space above and just show you this factoring part. So what are factors of 3? X squared that get me to 1x, and as it turns out, again, this is not factorable. So I think this is a good one because this is a slightly tougher problem. So I'm going to do the quadratic formula. I'm going to see that a is 1 and b is 1 and c is 3, and now here goes the quadratic formula. X equals opposite b, so I write -1 plus or minus, and then I want to square root. I'm going to square b, so 1 squared is 1 minus 4 times a times c, and then all of that is over 2a, so 2. So when I try to solve, again, you want to focus on that square root first. And when I do the square root, I want to multiply this 4 times 1 times 3, which is going to give me 11. And then when I have 1 take away 11, that's actually a -10. So what's going to happen here is that we are going to get an imaginary solution. So remember, we're supposed to have 3 answers, and I'm going to get 2 of them, but they're going to be imaginary from the quadratic formula. So the best way to write this answer, because 10, if I look at factors of 10, 10's not perfect and 10 doesn't have factors. So the only thing I'm going to do is deal with the I. So it's going to be -1 plus or minus, since I'm taking the square root of a negative number. Let's see, hopefully you can see all that. I will do the square root of 10, but I'll put an I on the outside and a 2. So what I'm circling now actually gives me 2 answers. So the directions did say factor completely. So let's talk about the factor completely part. So when I take a look at factoring it completely, and I'm going to put a box around some of this stuff. So far, what I've boxed in is some of the factors. 2 is a GCF, and then x squared plus x plus 3. And then the other factor comes from what would have given me a half. And we're going to make this as basic as we can. So let me talk about the solutions before I list the other factors. So remember, the 3 answers, this gave me 2 answers. It gave me -1 plus the imaginary the square root of 10 over 2, and then it gave me a minus. And then there was the 0 that we figured out with the calculator, which is a half. And the easiest way to do that is just make it x minus a half. That's just fine for this. And so I have factored it completely, but I actually also found the 3 answers. And I do realize that was a slightly tougher problem. All right, I'm going to leave this first page, the rest of it up to you. Number 6, again, that hasn't been done. I was just using that space. So I want you to try those 5, 6, and 7 on your own. You're more than welcome to look at the printed out answer key, but yeah. All right, as far as this page goes, I think I'm just going to make that a second video. Okay, I lied. I'm not going to make it a second factoring video because these 4 problems, these are factorable. So just to remind you, it does have to be in standard form. So I would subtract that 12 over, and then I would look for a GCF, which it doesn't have, and I'll get this one started. So I would group the first 2 and the last 2 because there's 4 terms, and then I would GCF this first set of parentheses by pulling out an x squared, and then that leaves me with 2x minus 3, which when I factor the second set of parentheses, remember they'll match, and that's going to be a certain number that you have to put here. All right, so I'm going to ask that you try these problems. You can leave out 11 because we didn't cover that one, but I'd like for you to try 10 and 12. And then 13 is just review with the graphing calculator.